Good evening and welcome, ladies and gentlemen. This is the InfoWars Nightly News. I'm your host, Aaron Dykes. Today is Monday, November 5th, 2012, just before the elections.
Tonight, Lieutenant Colonel Anthony Schaefer drops a bombshell on Benghazi Gate just one night before the 2012 presidential election. Plus, Hurricane Sandy is turning into Katrina 2.0. And Aaron Dykes previews the InfoWars special election coverage. That's coming up next, the InfoWars Nightly News.
After the flood comes the freeze. There is new news about the northeastern storm expected to hit New Jersey and New York in the wake of Sandy, as the aftermath has already been very chaotic, a very inappropriate response from FEMA, as at least 40,000 people are without shelter, without homes at the moment, particularly tens of thousands of public housing people who may be freezing in weather that may dip as low as the 20s. It may also bring more flooding, more freezing, and more destruction, perhaps even a bigger FEMA response. This is in Zero Hedge. It's also been reported in the New York Times, in Reuters, in CBS, and other mainstream blogs about the potential effect of the new storm expected to hit Wednesday after the elections in the areas most hard hit by Hurricane Sandy. Something to keep an eye on as we look to the fact that Sandy is now unfolding into a Katrina 2.0. Melissa Melton has that story rounding up all the news in the wake of that terrible storm that hit the Atlantic eastern coast. You've got the New York Times and the fact that they celebrated immediately after the hurricane hit how great FEMA was, how they were coming to the rescue, and yet we find in Breitbart, other outlets, how FEMA failed to even plan ahead for the basics of food and water. They ran out of water. That was on Drudge Report and other sites yesterday. It's not expected to arrive until today. They weren't able to distribute bottled water. They also didn't even do purchasing for food for the displaced residents in New York and New Jersey until Friday, when the bid closed on November 2nd, despite the fact they had 4, 5, maybe even 6 days where they knew the direction of the storm. It was completely accurate. Where they predicted it was going to hit, it actually hit, but they didn't plan ahead. Why? Because FEMA is the Federal Emergency Management Agency. Why didn't they plan ahead when it's their job, their critical mission, their mandate to protect the people most affected by this flooding? You've got gas shortages, fuel shortages, they're unable to heat things, and you've got people diving in dumpsters trying to find food when FEMA, of all their roles, is supposed to be there to at least meet those basic needs. They didn't do it. Didn't they learn their lesson from Katrina, where we saw thousands and thousands of people without homes, thrown into that terrible Superdome, which became a crime and cesspit? You had police on the bridges shooting people for trying to walk off the bridge and escape. You had the gun confiscations and everything else. Is that where the aftermath of Hurricane Sandy is heading? Well, we'll find out, but Melissa Melton also points out how FEMA's actual funding through congressional investigations and the Cox Newspaper Group study, they found that back in 1992 numbers, only about $243 million of FEMA's budget went to actual disaster relief, while almost $3 billion went to black ops. We've covered this extensively here at Infowars.com, how FEMA's real mission and Homeland Security's real mission is to build up the continuity of government systems, how to keep an illegitimate form of government going if they decide that the constitutional form of government can't survive because of any kind of disaster, natural disaster, man-made, terrorism, fallout from civil unrest, if there's a big economic collapse, you name it. That's what that federal family is really here for. They're not here to take care of you in a disaster, so you'd better make plans to take care of yourself. That's why, of course, people have argued to return that duty, which was traditionally held by local communities and in some instances states, back to the local scene and to private agencies who've been again and again and again hampered by FEMA's response. They keep volunteers away from the scene of disaster. They've even kept out the Red Cross, you name it. You've got people like Rudy Giuliani saying FEMA is as bad here in Sandy as they were in Katrina, although it's very limited comments, clearly just meant for this election cycle. I'm sure he would have done the same were he in power.
Visit Infowars.com and PrisonPlanet.com. When you're on the site, you can also tune in 24 hours a day to my daily radio broadcast. There's also a free iPhone app to listen to the syndicated radio show when and where you want.